educationists, researchers, teachers, tutors, educators, mentors, policymakers, activists, and the learners of all ages. Greetings from the United Nations Bangladesh. I am really honored today to have this opportunity to speak on this auspicious event of International Literacy Day 2020 at this online global celebration invited by No Passport Voice. All countries, including Bangladesh, is celebrating this day with utmost importance despite the current limitations. The COVID-19 has brought all of us on a common platform to rethink the literacy and the lifelong education in a new height, in a new environment, and with changed methods and modalities, perhaps a sustainable solution in nature and scope. Dear friends, despite all efforts nationally and internationally, 773 million adults and young people lack basic literacy skills, and more than 617 million children and adolescents are not achieving minimum proficiency levels in reading and mathematics, according to UNESCO. COVID-19 has further aggravated the challenges by affecting schooling and learning opportunities, especially for youth and adults with no or low literacy skills. COVID-19 pandemic has compelled the government to close down schools in more than 190 countries, affected 1.6 billion students and 63 million primary and secondary teachers. In Bangladesh alone, education of 42 million students from pre-primary to higher secondary, madrasa, and technical education has been disrupted. The government of Bangladesh has rapidly deployed remote learning solutions, particularly in formal education for children and young people. However, a large portion of students are still out of coverage due to non-availability or no connectivity. Literacy in general in Bangladesh is not yet in its expected level as targeted to achieve 100% by 2014. Esteemed colleagues, the International Literacy Day 2020 is being observed with the theme Literacy, Teaching and Learning in the COVID-19 crisis and beyond, with a focus on the role of educators and changing pedagogies. It highlights literacy learning in a lifelong learning perspective, with a major focus on youth and adults. Although the pre-COVID situation was not bearing a satisfactory status, the current crisis has broadened the gap further. UNICEF and Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics, in its multiple indicator cluster survey 2019, observed the literacy rate of 70.3% in rural and 77.3% in urban areas, but only 51% in urban slums. These figures represent the 15 to 24 age cohort. On the other hand, we all know literacy is correlated with the child marriage and child labor as well. Children engaged in child labor were found with 9% deficient in foundational literacy and numeracy compared to the children not engaged in child labor. In reading proficiency, for example, children that engaged in child labor was 41% in its proficiency compared to children without engagement in child labor could show 50% proficiency. Similarly, in mathematics, the difference of 3% found between them. Out of 6 million out of school children from primary to secondary level, almost 1 million are still at the primary level despite compulsory primary education program since 1990. Dropout rates in secondary schools are high and more than 40% as per education sector analysis report. Dear education partners at government and non-government level, in Bangladesh, it is likely that COVID-19 will impact literacy rates, which had seen improvements prior to COVID-19. Due to the outbreak of the coronavirus, there will be serious impacts on education in Bangladesh. Second chance education for school dropouts, regular non-formal education program, and other adult literacy programs have been suspended with hardly any alternative virtual program through TV and radio or other means. It is thus a major concern to revive the agenda seriously with its probable impact on youth and adult literacy, educators related to the program, and teaching and learning environment and structure. Dear colleagues, Bangladesh has been able to uplift its economic status into a lower middle income country and soon dreams to step in the row of middle income country. A great deal of this dream depends on the demographic dividend that the country will enjoy up to 2031 as per prediction. As we all know that the young population and their proper education and skills can contribute into a faster economy. 85% of labor force is in informal economy. Literacy and vocational education thus need to be integrated. Number of students enrollment have increased to 1 million in Bangladesh now, but less than 29% are female. Technical and vocational education and training, and in short TVET program, access has increased from 2% in 2010 to 16% in 2018, with 87% share from the private sector, according to Education Sector Plan Report 2020. Dear teachers, trainers, researchers, and educators, International Literacy Day 2020 during this COVID-19 pandemic has opened up an opportunity to reflect on and discuss how innovative and effective pedagogies and teaching methodologies can be used in youth and adult literacy programs to face such crises and beyond. We have to analyze the role of educators as well as effective policies and supportive structures conducive to learning, a new normal. A drastic shift in our approach in terms of needs and demands, functionality and service provision, effective delivery in an efficient manner, continuity without disruption, and above all, assessment with quality are of high concern. Bangladesh, known as dynamic society, adopting collaborative approach between the government and non-government agencies for education, especially for non-formal education and adult literacy. Innovations and alternatives should be possible and ready for crisis period like any other natural disaster such as flood, cyclone, etc. I admire the education researchers, teachers, educators to devote to reimagination of education alternatives for the young and adult population in need. Dear policymakers, moving towards the recovery and resilience building phase, it would be important, super important, that literacy, including youth and adult literacy, be strengthened in the national COVID-19 response and recovery plans to ensure the continuity of learning, improved provision, and more inclusive national lifelong learning systems and capacities. Increasing the total national budget for education up to at least 20% and substantial allocation for youth and adult learning is the demand of the time. Building the networks of all community learning centers, supporting these with necessary equipment, providing trained manpower, and guiding the Bureau of Non-Formal Education for undertaking massive programs for youth and adult population can ultimately ensure the productive and skilled workforce for the nation. So I hope all development partners will support a pragmatic plan in this mission. Dear all, to meet the goal and target of Sustainable Development Goal number 4, basic education for all with quality and community learning system with adequate options have to be well perceived in the 8th five-year planning. COVID-19 has limited the scope, but as we moved for alternatives for formal education, similar active movement needs to be triggered immediately for the non-formal and continuing education. For examples, following the Non-Formal Education Act 2024, the Basic Literacy Program as well as the Out-of-School Children's Program have to be continued without disruption and alternatively in crisis period. As recommended in the Education Sector Analysis 2020, a lifelong learning approach must be adopted as a key operating principle in the entire education sector, but must be reflected strongly in non-formal and adult education. To make lifelong learning a reality, opportunities for functional literacy for youth and adults must be a first step. A network of community learning centers, in short CLCs, offering a menu of relevant learning activities and supported by essential resources complementing formal education must be built up. Basic literacy program and second chance education, as has been planned, should be launched with increased capacity. Innovative and flexible learning approaches have already been tested and found workable in Bangladesh. These approaches need to be popularized and widely implemented by government organizations, non-governmental organizations programs. Girls and persons with disability could be supported by including them with social safety net programs such as special stipends in non-formal sectors. Bangladesh Open University could be used as the research hub for expansion of youth and adult education with all technical and technological facilities. All online and virtual platforms should be utilized for non-formal and continuing education for illiterate and new literates with regional and subnational technical hubs. And lastly, networks of non-formal education teachers could be established and their professional training, knowledge management needs to be improved through all possible dissemination modalities. Instead of treating as para-professionals, converting these educators as efficient workforce should be the right strategy. I thank for the opportunity to deliver and highlight the messages. Thank you to the No Passport Voice for their campaign for literacy of I Am the Voice, a voice of all, for all. Happy International Literacy Day to everyone. Thank you.